wish I could tell you a story of a night bathed in red, where creatures lurk in the dark and voices whisper in your head. But if I have to tell you, Circus of Fear, you're already dead.
The Little Slasher That Could is now a full-blown trilogy and one of the biggest ever in horror. This time though, Art decided to take a stab at Christmas. Welcome to A Work of Art, the Terrifier 3 review.
Merry Christmas!
This movie's awesome. With the surprising runaway success of Terrifier 2, a threequel was not only highly anticipated, but sorely needed, especially after that post-credit stinger that they gave us. For all two of you Terrifier fans that don't know what I'm talking about, in the middle of the credits of Terrifier 2, we are treated to a post-credit stinger, wherein we meet two orderlies, one played by Chris Jericho, who's enjoying some Plan 9 from outer space. Nice. And they are lamenting about Victoria, who happens to be a patient of theirs. The other orderly lamenting that despite the trauma that she's been through, Victoria seems to be rather well adjusted and very agreeable. And then she goes to go check on her, do some rounds with Victoria, and comes upon a very horrific scene that we actually see play out throughout the orderly's conversation. This horrific scene being that Victoria has quite literally given birth to Art the Clown's head. Terrifier 3 opens from this exact moment, and of course in true Terrifier fashion, because these two people dared to have the audacity to be alive in Art the Clown's presence, don't make it out of this encounter. And neither does one other person, a police officer that discovers Art the Clown's headless body in the carnival ride, the Terrifier, the body which comes to life, beheads the officer, and uses that head as its own until it can get to Art the Clown's head to put it back on its body. This is all in the first 10 minutes. After successfully escaping, Art and Victoria go back to Art's lair to charge their batteries. It would seem after they escaped, the story here doesn't unfold as originally intended. With the pandemic having halted production on Terrifier 2, its two youngest stars, Elliot Fulham and Amelie McLean, naturally got older, and narrative changes to Terrifier 3 had to be made. This, however, unfortunately meant that even though Elliot Fulham was able to return as Jonathan, Amelie McLean would not return to reprise her role as the little pale girl. The character still stuck around in a spiritual sense, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But with these changes had to come a big time skip to, of course, align with Elliot Fulham's aging up. And despite this change having had to be made, even though it may not have been the original intention, I really liked what we got. What we have here is a solid movie, and dare I say it, it has an actual story this time. Now, I love all three of these movies genuinely and thoroughly, but if I'm being honest, Terrifier 3 is doing the most, compared to the last two, of being an actual movie. Now, we're not dealing with anything deep and philosophical here. It's still a Terrifier movie at the end of the day, but we have an actual storyline going on. We have fleshed out character arcs here. We have genuine heart between characters as well, and we're seeing sides to Art that we thought we would never see. Yeah, at the end of the day, Terrifier 3 is really pulling out all the stops. Here, we are once again following Jonathan and Sienna, 5 years after the event of Terrifier 2, having survived and defeated Art the Clown, but both are in very different parts of life now. Understandably, after the event of Terrifier 2, Sienna has become so distraught and broken from them that she has been in a hospital for this entire time, now living with their secondary family, the aunt and uncle of her and Jonathan. Jonathan, however, has decided to go to school, go to college, wanting to forget the things that had happened, and because of this, they become estranged. And with this sort of tension between them, we're getting some really good performances out of them, especially Lauren Lavera. Sienna Shaw was undoubtedly the best character in Terrifier 2, and just like Laurie Strode did for Jamie Lee Curtis or Sidney Prescott did for Neve Campbell, shot Lauren Rivera into final girl stardom, making her a big name in horror, and deservedly so. Now in Terrifier 3, Lauren Rivera has to bring something more, and she definitely understands the assignment. What Sienna is going through in this movie isn't exactly new territory for horror, slashers in particular. You have the final girl having to overcome her trauma from the previous plot of the last slasher film. It's not anything new at this point, but what does matter is how you portray a role like that. A role like this could come with a lot of nuances and a lot of layers, just depending on the character and how you play that. And Lauren Rivera's way of playing Sienna here shows a lot of respect for that. She knows this character, and the fact that she's able to go from this hardened badass that goes after the killer to someone that is terrified by the killer and is paranoid that he's going to return shows her range. Now, in the story of this movie, Jonathan is away for a lot of it, and he's a lot older now. He's an adult now. So, Sienna doesn't have him to protect anymore, but she still has someone to protect in her little cousin Gabby. And you know what? I gotta say, while I did like Lauren Rivera and Elliot Fulham's dynamic in Terrifier 2, I think I really like her dynamic with Gabby a lot more here. It has a lot of sweetness to it, a lot of heart to it, and it gives her something to strive for and protect and something to hold on to when she's going through this healing from this trauma. Speaking of trauma, let's talk about that opening scene. Okay, so even if this movie was only slightly on your radar, you probably heard about how this movie would open and what Art the Clown would do in this movie's opening moments. And yes, it's true. Art does, how do I say it? He does end a child. And frankly, it's done pretty well and as tastefully as you can do it in a movie like this. It's shocking, it's horrifying, it does the job, and it shows that Art doesn't really have any limits. Art is vicious in this. There's even some stuff with rats that's completely uncomfortable. I mean, they really go for it in this one, man. You thought Terrifier 2 was bad. I didn't think they could surpass it. They do here. Almost every kill is like the salt bedroom scene from Terrifier 2. They're just going full bombastic, just going for it, man. And when it comes to Art, Lauren Rivera isn't the only one stretching her acting chops here. David Howard Thornton is giving us sides of Art that we probably thought we'd never see. We're seeing him get annoyed. We're seeing him get tired. We're even seeing him get excited to meet Santa. I don't want to talk about what happens to Santa. Art has become more and more of a character as these films have gone on, with most of the development, of course, happening here. It has me intrigued to see where the future of this character lies. Damien Leone has said that he does have a definitive end in mind for not only Terrifier, but for Art the Clown as a character. David Howard Thornton apparently knows what this ending is and loves it, and both promise that this is going to be very divisive once it happens. So, I'm excited to see what that's going to be. I'm excited to see where Art goes. Art, though, isn't the only one getting some character development here. In Terrifier 2, the little pale girl was meant to represent the evil that had chosen Art the Clown to enact these heinous things onto people, and it chose the visage of his first victim to appear as before him. But with Amelie McLean unable to return as said character, they had to put the character as a presence, and what they did was they had it possess the body of Victoria Hayes, affectionately known as Vicky, making her a very prominent character in this movie. Victoria Hayes is an extremely interesting character to me. Not only is she the one other constant since the first movie other than Art, she was also technically the final girl of the first one, and is a final girl that has come to partner with the slasher that did these horrible things to her. And I would actually argue that other than Sienna, no other character has suffered more. Samantha Scafidi kills it in this, no pun intended. She's not letting that makeup get in the way of her performance at all. There are scenes where she's arguably scarier than Art sometimes. The story arc of Victoria Hayes is what helped Terrifier as a franchise stand out and sets it apart. Most people remember this franchise for the big splatter spectacle that it was. But analysts and enthusiasts, I believe, are going to remember this story arc. As much as I love this movie, though, it still has some of the franchise's bad habits. Just like the two before it, Terrifier 3 doesn't really answer a lot of questions. Terrifier 2 had a similar issue, but it was a tad more acceptable there because they were introducing new character arcs, new plot threads, new bits of lore, right? And you don't necessarily have to answer every question that you raise in your movie in that movie, especially if you're going to make another one. But that's just it. Especially if you're going to make another one. All of the questions that were raised in Terrifier 2 aren't even answered here in Terrifier 3. Yes, we meet Sienna's father here, but other than the expedition dump near the end of Terrifier 2, we don't really know anything about him. The scene with him just kind of shows what he and Sienna's relationship was like when she was a little kid, and it's nice to see, but there's no context or answers to what his connection to Art is, why Sienna is the chosen one, or anything like that. It just kind of comes and goes, and the movie feels like it kind of stops dead. There's also this very weird, surreal thing that happens where it's in the trailer. She sees that monster forging the sword, and it roars at her, and then it just ends, right? Speaking of that, there's also very few payoffs to plot threads from Terrifier 2 and in this one. In the trailer, Sienna says,
I have to go back to the Terrifier.
and that happens off screen. I didn't even realize that she had done it when it happened. She has the vision, she goes to Jonathan, says that she has to go there, and then she comes back home and she has like this long box present that's all wrapped up, and I sat there and thought to myself, what is that? Oh, that's the sword. Imagine any other movie doing that.
Dawson. Rose Dawson.
Other than that little bump in the road of this movie, I still feel like the writing handles the other character arcs pretty well. Like Jonathan's. I really like Jonathan's. So he's at this school now, right? And he has this roommate. And the poor guy, he's just wanting to move on with his life, but his roommate has this girlfriend named Mia, who's a true crime podcaster. And she's obsessed. She's a fanatic. She actually says to Jonathan that she's a big fan of his and Sienna. She's one of these like overly zealous true crime fans, and she just won't leave him alone. There's this one scene where Mia is talking to Jonathan's roommate, and she's talking about how, oh, she just wants to, get into Jonathan's head to find out what it's like to be so close to that level of evil, what it feels like to be in that kind of danger. And it feels gross, it feels really disrespectful that she wants to know that she wants to exploit Jonathan and Sienna's trauma that way. And, well, she gets what she wants. Now, I certainly can't show you this scene, and I'll be honest, I couldn't think of a clever way to work around it. So, here's an idea of what it looks like. Terrifier 3 grossed $88.6 million, up against its budget of $2 million, becoming the highest grossing unrated movie of all time. There's no denying it now. Art the Clown and Terrifier print money. With success like that, the franchise is going to undoubtedly continue, but will there be a point where it starts to kind of show the cracks, where we're going to get a giant misstep? Damien Leone has said that he does have enough material for Terrifier 4 and 5, and if those print money too, are they going to want Damien Leone to make more? Is he going to want to make more? I believe that there is going to be a sweet spot. Personally, for me, I think it should stop at Terrifier 4 because you can have too much of a good thing. And this has been a great thing. Once it ends, I'll be sad for sure, but it's going to be a ride that I'm glad that I was on. I really want to thank those of you that have been watching these Terrifier reviews. They've been some of my favorite videos to make, and I really appreciate that even though there are a ton of other Terrifier reviews out there that you can watch, that you chose this one, and I really appreciate it. But, like I ask at the end of every video, what did you think of Terrifier 3 if you saw it already? Have you seen any of the Terrifier movies? Is this really not your thing? Is this absolutely your thing like it is mine? Let me know down in the comments. Let's talk everything Art the Clown, David Howard Thornton, and Terrifier down there. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.